That was really beautiful, Scott. I think we're centered, right? But I have some words anyway. Tara Brach, the very wise insight meditation teacher, talks about the two wings of the bird of wisdom, attending and befriending. What she means by that is that the beginning of wisdom comes with our willingness to attend and befriend whatever is happening. She primarily teaches this as a personal practice to gain clarity, but it can also be used collectively to bring to our world the kind of attention and grace we will need as we continue to be challenged by what some have termed the great unraveling. So we pay attention to whatever arises in meditation: joy, fear, anxiety, grasping, desire, depression, overwhelm, and we name it. So we acknowledge that we are afraid. We acknowledge that we are grasping after something. We acknowledge we are anxious or fearful or filled with hate or despair. And then we befriend what we have seen. We nourish and nurture those emotions and thoughts. We invite them in for tea and conversation. We rock them as we would a crying baby, as Thich Nhat Hanh teaches. This is not to say that we encourage them to grow. We simply acknowledge without judgment that they are there. And by spending time with what we usually try to avoid, we develop a relationship with ourselves. We learn to trust ourselves. We learn that we can stand any thought or emotion as long as we stay present with it and try not to run from it or fight with it. We become integrated. By practicing the acronym RAIN that Tara teaches, we learn that by recognizing, allowing, investigating, and nourishing those darkest and most fearful parts of ourselves, that we don't need to run from the truth. Telling the truth kindly will set us free. Can we take just a moment to settle into our chairs, take some deep breaths, really be present in this moment, in this room. And I'd like to say the words of a Hopi elder to us this morning. You have been telling people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour, and there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where is your water? Know your garden. It is time to speak your truth. Create your community. Be good to each other. And do not look outside yourself for the leader. This could be a good time. There is a river flowing very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they are torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above water. And I say, see who is there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. The time for the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves, banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for. I first got the idea for this sermon from an interview I read with Joanna Macy on a site called Exopermaculture. The interview was titled "On How to Prepare Internally for Whatever Comes Next." Eco-philosopher Joanna Macy, who was born in 1929, is a scholar of Buddhism, general systems theory, and deep ecology. A respected voice in movements for peace, justice, and ecology, and a prolific writer, she interweaves her scholarship with 4 decades of activism. In this interview and in her book, Coming Back to Life, Ms. Macy brings up positive disintegration as crucial to the healing process. I'd heard the term before and thought I understood it, but I looked it up just to be sure. The term describes the theory of Kazimierz Dabrowski, a Polish psychologist and psychiatrist. Dabrowski differentiated 3 primary groups of people. First, a group of individuals who display unilevel development. These individuals are primarily influenced by socialization and comprise some 65% of the population. A group defined by Dabrowski as primary integration. A second group of individuals are characterized by various forms and degrees of positive disintegration, while the third group represents individuals who had achieved a high level of development defined by Dabrowski as secondary integration. Here's the really interesting part. Contrary to traditional approaches to mental health, which view depression, anxiety, and grief as symptoms of personal pathology to be eliminated, the positive disintegration approach views these kinds of breakdowns as necessary to achieving a higher level of awareness, self-actualization, and the ability to transform oneself and the world. I've long admired the work of Joanna Macy because she brings a new awareness of how we need to reframe our conversations about what is happening to our world and how we need to respond. She has a brilliant mind as a scientist, writer, Buddhist teacher, and spiritual mentor. She is better able than most to hold that space between fearless knowledge of what's happening to our world and detachment from the drama of inappropriate reactivity that many of us engage in. And most of us know our personal brand of reactivity really well. We become depressed or anxious, overwhelmed. We shake our heads at others' stupidity. We are confounded and outraged. We become sick in body, mind, or spirit. We continue to work for justice, for compassion, for equity, sustainability, the rights of all beings. But in our heart of hearts, many of us believe it doesn't make a difference, or it won't be enough, or it won't be in time. And we develop an attitude of numbness and apathy. We lose our joy, our direction, and we lose the best of ourselves in the process. A really evolved Buddhist teacher might say to us in response to our heartfelt plea for wisdom, we're all going to die and the world is crumbling around us. What a relief. And we would be sorry we ever donated money to that Sangha if this is the best our teacher can offer. But this really is the best and most honest guidance we could receive. Because when we agree to look at the truth of what is happening, what we find is liberation. We find grief and what feels like inconsolable heartbreak. And our society tells us that these feelings arise from some personal weakness or dysfunction and can be fixed by this little pill. Our hearts and souls, though, tell us that this is the only sane response to being in love with a world that is collapsing. When we feel that gut-wrenching grief over the critical illness we have caused our planet and all of her inhabitants, it actually means that we realize our connectedness with one another. Animals, humans, and the living systems of the earth. It means we're still alive. We care. And because we care, we hurt. When we realize that we have all arisen from the same source and are made of the same stardust, then we realize it is us who is drowning with the polar bear. It is us going to bed tonight hungry while our mother cries in the corner of our hut. It is our daughter who has been kidnapped and trafficked. It is our village being bombed by the United States. And it is me who sees the Syrian child drowning just one hand length further away than I can reach him. We have been taught a lie so big that we now mistake it for the truth. And that lie is that we are separate. We are individuals existing only for ourselves and a handful of others who are important to us. But in those moments at 3 a.m. when we lie awake trying to find answers and trying to breathe calmly, we remember the truth. And we know that our grief from the world, for the world, comes out of our love for the world. What Joanna Macy calls a wild love for the world. And we remember that we are just one wonderful and essential cell in a complex system that depends on the survival of all for its continued health. We know we've reached a tipping point. We cannot stop climate change. We cannot return to the world of the 1950s. We have runaway hatred, homophobia, hunger, poverty, pollution, and we let our frustration overtake us when we stop one pipeline and 5 others spring up in its place. The good news is, though, more and more of us are now awakening to the lies we are told and the ones we perpetuate ourselves, such as we need a 2 or 3 or 4,000 square foot house, or 2 or 3, that capitalism is a good thing, even when we see it destroying the very fabric of our lives and the only home we have. We're delighted when someone tells us about their 13th grandchild, even though we know the Earth's carrying capacity is already extremely compromised. We even badger our childless children for grandchildren for whom the future is totally uncertain. We shake our heads in sorrow and impotence because there is nothing we can do about the 1 billion starving people in the world, while we simultaneously feed 70 billion animals a year that we then slaughter. We've become more concerned about not offending our all lives matter neighbor than we are about abolishing racism. And we're more concerned that our shirt sleeves not be frayed or our shoes not be a little run down and our cars speak highly of our accomplishments than we are about our children and grandchildren's futures. We want things to change, but we ourselves are not willing to see fundamental truths that we refuse to acknowledge. We continue to drink bottled water when we know the fossil fuels involved in production, the toxins released into our atmosphere, and the fact that our oceans are dying from plastic suffocation. We continue to believe that we can help by talking about helping. And please know that by we, I'm including all of us and myself, because we are all complicit in the situation in which we find ourselves. We want things to change, but we don't want to change fundamentally or have our lives change in any way that might stretch our comfort zones. Our current world is like a very large alcoholic family. The alcoholic family depends on a conspiracy of lies, secrecy, and shame in order to survive. This is what we're involved in now at a global level. And just as alcoholics and other addicts have to hit bottom before they're willing to change, we are having to unravel before we become willing to take action. Sometimes addicts and their families change only when there is a very painful intervention or event that shocks them out of their illness long enough to see another way. This is where we find ourselves now. We're beginning to awaken from this trance of delusion, as the Buddhists teach, to understand that our overconsumption is paid for by someone else, sometimes very far away, that we will never know. The 200-year-old loan for that overconsumption is coming due. The interest rate for that loan is something we refuse to read. We all signed the contract. So we're seeing now the disintegration of educational, economic, and spiritual institutions. We're seeing the collapse of civility, humane treatment of each other, and the growth of fear, divisiveness, hatred, and righteousness on all sides. We shake our heads at the stupidity of those who support politicians we deem idiots, because we refuse to see that those support have been losing their economic stability, health insurance, homes, jobs, and self-respect for decades under systems designed to use them and dispose of them. Any system that uses without replacing, produces waste that can't be broken down, abuses those who have kept the systems running, shows disdain for the very ones they're exploiting, and rejoices at their good fortune while crushing those in their way, is destined to fail. We are seeing the failure take place before our very eyes, but it's so breathtaking in its scope that we don't know how to respond. Ms. Macy suggests that we respond by opening our eyes and being willing to see the beauty and the promise that are still in front of us. She says, what it comes down to is we are here now. So the choice is how to live now. With the little time left, we could wake up more. We could allow this whole experience of the planet, which is intrinsically rewarding, to manifest through our heart minds, so that the planet may see itself, so that life may see itself, and we can bless it in some way. So there is some source of blessing on us even as we die. A Korean monk once said, sunsets are beautiful too, not just sunrises. We can do it beautifully. If we're going to go out, then we can do it with some nobility, generosity, and beauty, so that we do not fall into shock and fear. Most of us hope that we'll handle the dying of a loved one this way. We would try to be there for them and for everyone who loves them. Most of us would not refuse to admit that our spouse, child, partner, parent, best friend, or companion animal is dying, because to refuse to see it would be to miss one of the most exquisite opportunities to show love that we have ever had. We would miss that once in a lifetime opportunity to be the best we can be. We would miss our chance to connect with each other at a deeper level than we knew possible. And we would miss the experience of realizing that our love for the dying has made us alive in a way we never were before. Joanna Macy goes on to say, this may be the last gasp of life on earth, and what a great last gasp if we realize we have fallen in love with each other. If you're really in the moment of experiencing our reality, you don't say, oh, I won't experience this because it's not going to last forever. You've got this moment. It's true for now. We can have a reasoned concern about what is down the track without necessarily getting hooked on something having to endure. Those of us who grew up in alcoholic families and who have worked hard at recovery know that when you block the reality of the situation with lies, denial, and secrecy, you also block yourself to joy, love, and the full experience of being alive. None of us likes to have a broken heart, but we learn that a broken heart is better than not having experienced what is heartfelt at all. In Joanna's work, she finds that what she's drawn to in the teaching she does, the experiential work, is to help people make friends with uncertainty and reframe it as a way of coming alive. Because there are never any guarantees at any point in life. She notes that it's probably more ingrained in the American citizen than in other parts of the world, that we feel we ought to know, we ought to be certain, in control, upbeat, smiling, sociable. That cultural cast has tremendous power to keep us benumbed and becalmed, as she calls it. And most of us have noticed that when we tell the truth about what's happening, we're the ones considered radical, negative, dark, like I may be right now. We're teased, confronted, and ridiculed. And the government even considers those of us who tell the truth about human rights abuses, environmental degradation, and animal abuse to be terrorists. But the real terrorists are those who insist, in the face of all evidence to the contrary, that everything is fine, that we can fix this, that God has a plan, that we're overreacting and spreading fear. Those who live in darkness and in lies can't bear to hear the truth. It's true in individual alcoholic families, and it's true of our cultural dedication to speak no evil, hear no evil, and see no evil. Like a cat who hides his face when he's afraid and thinks you can't see him, we're all hiding our faces as our beloved planet burns and her inhabitants suffer. This is not what Unitarians do, though. We don't hide from the truth. We embrace it and expose it, and then we try to change it. We're in a collective battle for our lives. Paul Hawken likens our current industrial, militaristic, capitalistic, destroying machine to a cancer on the earth, and we who are fighting for physical and spiritual health to the immune system. Just as we don't know the outcome of an individual cancer and whether the immune system will be able to overcome it, we don't know if we're numerous and powerful enough for this battle either. We do know, though, what happens if we stop trying. Even more importantly, we don't yet know what secrets and tricks Mother Nature has up her sleeve. Like every patient, nurturing mother, she is waiting for us to find our way on our own. When it becomes obvious that we're not finding our way, I believe that she will show us. At that point, it will be a rude awakening. She's been calling and calling for us to get out of bed, and soon she will dump us out onto the floor. She's a good mother. She will not let us destroy ourselves unless that's the very best lesson we can have. She'll love us to the end. She will not turn her back on us. Let's not turn our back on her or on each other in these times of excruciating waiting and witness. Let's love each other enough to start telling the truth. Let's love each other enough to stay by the deathbed side. Let's love ourselves enough to stop hiding from the pain and begin healing the hurt. We are all one, as indigenous cultures have always known. Each of us may have been in many cycles of reality before. We have all been invited here in this particular time to witness the grave illness, and perhaps death of the world. We have been thought worthy. Let's not doubt ourselves or the others in the boat with us. We are up to the task, or we would not have been chosen. We are honored to be here and now. This is from the poet Rilke. I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it. I circle around God, around the primordial tower. I've been circling for thousands of years, and I still don't know. Am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song? Go in peace.
Join me in extinguishing the words of our chalice.
We extinguish this flame,
and the light of your truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. We are located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of South Main Street, Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Look for the blue signs just before the turn. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or at our website, www.canandaiguauu.org. Producer and editor, Daniel Brigham.